We ring this bell 3 times. The first is to call us into relationship with ourselves. The first is to call us into relationship with our ancestors. Today, I call us into relationship with the Unitarians and Christian Universalists who formed this liberal religious tradition, and with the forebears of other faith traditions welcomed into Unitarian Universalism. The second calls us into relationship with ourselves and one another in the present, that we open ourselves to the wellsprings of the faith that create Unitarian Universalism today, the diverse array of liberal religions and practices present in the world and amongst us here. And the third calls us into relationship with our children and our children's children, out to the 7th generation, helping us to realize that although this very moment is the only one that exists, our karma affects all who come after us. Good morning, I'm Eric Dittmar. I want to make a quick note. The order of service that's available online today is for last week's service on temptation. I guess temptation is so good it's worth doing twice. And also apparently today there will be no order to our service. So, a little under a year ago, I was asked to join the congregation's Committee on Ministry, COM for short. I had to give it some serious thought and reflection. I asked myself, what does COM do? And then there was this word, ministry, that we were supposed to be the committee for. I was able to get a little clarity about what COM does, but even after talking with several people, I was still left with a question. What's Mission Peak's ministry? I still don't know, and I won't tell you today. That's for you all to answer. But I do have thoughts about the question. And I'm thankful to be among people who believe questions are to be asked, who take the act of considering, of looking at deep questions together to be a sacred act. St. Francis of Assisi said, "The one you are looking for is the one who is looking." Come, let us share some sacred time, and together we might glimpse a little of the one who is looking.
Good morning. Please join me in reciting these words to light our chalice, which calls us together and unites us with Unitarian Universalists all over the globe. We light this chalice to remind ourselves to treat all people kindly, because we are all one family. Take good care of the earth, because it is our home, and to live lives goodness and love, because that is how we will become the best people we can be.
Good morning. Welcome to Mission Peak Unitarian Universalist Congregation. I'm Suzette Takei, and I'm a member of your board. My pronouns are she and her. We're so glad that you've joined us this morning. Unitarian Universalism is a radically inclusive, non-doctrinal, non-dogmatic, open-minded, and open-hearted faith. We are people who are coming at truth from different paths, and we gather together across different identities, experiences, and beliefs for the dignity and inherent worth of every person. Together, we see our job is to love the hate out of this world, to heal the hurt in ourselves and one another, and to be the change we'd like to see in the world. I'm going to start by highlighting some of our current events. Next weekend, on the 4th, from 1 to 3, you can join Don in his Radical Truth Party, sort of like the Unitarian Universalist meets Cards for Humanity, where truth and deep thinking win the game. The board has moved our board meeting for March to the first week of March, so March 7th. All are invited to come and check us out. Stay as long as you'd like. We are looking for new board members for the 23-24 term. And I wanted to thank Kathy Bain for joining the board and Deanna Alm for stepping over to the treasurer role. So we have a full board. Yay! All right, if you're here for our guests for the first time, welcome. And here's how our hybrid services work. We use chat in the Zoom or our book over on the table in person. And we have social hour after the service where we visit in breakout rooms or out on the patio. The worship host will give you more information immediately after the service. And someone from our membership team will put a link to our weekly newsletter in the chat so you can see all the events that are coming up. I believe we're also putting the PDF link to the order of service. No? Nope, never mind. And if you're here in person, please ask any questions that you'd like. If you're online for the first time, someone will reach out to you and you're more than welcome to ask questions or ask for a newsletter to be sent to you. And I'm glad that you are here today, so thank you and enjoy the service this morning.
Good morning again, everybody. And yes, I was just checking the chat back at the membership table. There is a link to today's order of service there if you want it. As you've heard and seen over the last few weeks, we've been encouraging people on Zoom to turn their cameras on. Doing so helps those of us here in Cole Hall feel more connected to all of you on Zoom. And it helps people on Zoom be more connected to each other. And finally, it helps our visitors get a better sense of who we are by seeing friendly faces instead of blank screens. It is not a requirement, just a request, but we always like to see you. We also like to take a quick moment to wave at each other here as a good morning greeting. So let's go. Those of us here, wave up at the camera up there, and I see all our Zoomers waving at us. May this small act of greeting help us all feel a sense of love and connection that we can carry in our hearts all through the week.
This true story comes to us from John Lewis, a great leader in this nation who died just last month. Many people were sad to lose him and thankful for all the things that he had done to bring about justice and fairness in our nation. He had lived a long and full life asking of himself and asking of all of us to show up for justice, to do what we can and just a little bit more to make sure that there is more fairness in our country. When he was 23 years old, he spoke at the March on Washington with Dr. King.
We are tired. We are tired of being beaten by policemen. We're tired of seeing our people locked up in jail over and over again. And then you holler, be patient. How long can we be patient? We want our freedom and we want it now.
John Lewis grew up in a large family, and he would spend time with his aunts and uncles, with his siblings and cousins. There were many children who lived in the neighborhood, and they would play together. This was long before there was a pandemic, and so people could play together and hang out together in person. Mr. Lewis tells us about a time when he was playing outside his Aunt Zenevia's house with about 14 other children when a big storm, arrived. A kind of storm that made him and everyone else afraid. I'm going to tell a story from his perspective, so it's like him talking. So when I say I, it really means John. Aunt Zenevia was the only adult around, and as the sky blackened and the wind grew stronger, she herded us all inside. Her house was not the biggest place around, and it seemed even smaller with so many children squeezed inside. Small and surprisingly quiet. All of the shouting and laughter that had been going on earlier outside had stopped. The wind was howling now, and the house was starting to shake, and we were scared. Even Aunt Zenevia was scared. And then it got worse. Now the house was beginning to sway, and the wood plank flooring beneath us began to bend, and then a corner of the house began lifting up. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. None of us could. This storm was actually pulling the house towards the sky with us in it. That was when Aunt Zenevia told us to clasp hands. Line up and hold hands, she said, and we did as we were told. And then she had us walk as a group towards the corner of the room that was rising. From the kitchen to the front of the house we walked, and the wind was screaming outside, and sheets of rain were beating on the tin roof. And we walked back in the other direction as another end of the house began to lift. And so it went back and forth, 15 children walking with the wind, holding that trembling house down with the weight of our small bodies. Can you imagine what it was like to have been inside that house? Afraid that it might fall apart from the destructive force of the wind and the rain from the whole storm? I'm so glad that John Lewis wasn't alone, that no one there was alone, that he was with his friends and family. I'm so glad that together they figured out a way to save the house, to save their home. When John Lewis was much older, just not that long before he died, he was writing down the story of his whole astounding life, and he wrote these words. More than half a century has passed since that day, and it has struck me more than once over the many years that our society is not unlike the children in that house, rocked again and again, the winds of one storm or another, the walls around us seemingly like they're going to fly apart. It seemed that way in the 1960s at the height of the civil rights movement, when America itself felt as if it might burst at the seams. So much tension, so many storms. But the people of conscience never left the house. They never ran away. They stayed, they came together, and they did the best they could, clasping hands and moving towards the corner of the house that was the weakest. And then another corner would lift, and we would go there. And eventually, inevitably, the storm would subside and the house would stand. But we knew another storm would come, and we would have to do it all over again. And we did. And we still do, all of us, you and I. Children holding hands, walking with the wind. Thank you for listening, not really to my story, but to Mr. John Lewis's story.
My turn to say good morning, if I can get this unhooked. Good morning, I'm Valerie Stewart. I am your Canvas coordinator this year, again. And I just want to remind everyone that the launch for Canvas is going to start on Sunday, March 12th. And the story that we just heard is so in tune with the theme for our Canvas this year, which is we are better together. And that's something that is a true statement in so many ways, and all of the values that Unitarian Universalists hold to our hearts. You'll be getting an invitation to join one of the 4 planned gatherings with a sign-up sheet tomorrow by email. But now I wish to pay a little tribute to some of the members here at Mission Peak. We have a group of poets, and so in planning Canvas documents and writing things, I was inspired by our poets, John Porter and the Jackie Porter, of course. So here is my poem to all of us to be better together. We are better together. Poetry, justice, kindness, understanding, music, seeking, appreciation, wisdom. We bring, we receive, we share. We are better together. So if you can join us on March 12th here in Cole Hall for our first gathering, and the only in-person gathering we plan at this time, we will love to see you there or online, because we are always together when we share, regardless of what space that is. Thank you all, and see you during Canvas.
We take up a collection on Sundays for the
Simple reason that our purpose in gathering is for more than just ourselves. We want to make sure that the ministries that we need, the ones that infuse worth and dignity into our children, our youth, and our programs of learning and leadership, and our ministries of anti-oppression, and our work in the larger world are in place to meet the needs of others. To donate to Mission Peak, you can mail a check. You can drop an envelope with a check in our mail slot, or you can pay online with a credit or debit card. And we hope you will make a contribution towards these worthy causes by mailing a check to the address or paying online. Thank you for supporting and sustaining the efforts of our members, friends, and staff. Your contributions make loving, learning, and leadership more possible. Thank you. One of the things that allows us to find joy and meaning, especially in the hard time, is the love and support we show one another. If you have a joy or concern that by sharing with this caring community might bring the encouragement or resilience you are needing, please write it now briefly in the chat. If you're here in person and you'd like to place a stone in the stone garden, you may do so while the music plays. And you also can write in the Joys and Concerns book over here. If your need is personal, you can also send an email to our minister, Greg Ward, or to me for a following up conversation.
Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? Will you reach out to me? Voices and all of our visions, and friends we could make such sweet harmony. Such sweet building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, and all of our voices, such friends harmonies, and building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? I reach out to voices, and all of our visions, and all of our voices, and all of our voices, building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony.
Okay, here are some of the joys and concerns that were shared in the chat. And finally, one last stone for the hopes and hurts still too tender to share. For the sake of love, keep our hearts, our doors and our minds and our arms open. Thank you.
Instead of a reading today, I'd like to take about 3 minutes to do one of my favorite exercises to cultivate the quality of meditation. This quality is sometimes expressed as being fully in the moment, or the dropping of self and other, or even thinking non-thinking. So please settle yourself into a comfortable posture for meditation while I explain. We will play a short 2-minute piece of music. Please try to listen to it fully. Try to hear each note or chord. Don't try to think ahead. Don't try to replay parts in your head. Just try to listen to it as it happens. If you find yourself thinking of something else, just try to bring your attention back to the notes. If you even find the notes feel a little more distant, it's another sign to bring your attention back to the music. After it ends, we'll spend another minute in quiet meditation. Just listen to the space where the music was. You may hear some other sounds around. They're just part of that space. Just let them be. And if you notice yourself starting to think about anything, just return to that quiet space in the same way as when the music was playing. And then I'll ring a bell at the end of that minute. So now you can either close your eyes or lower your eyes and don't try to focus on anything. While waiting for the music to start, maybe take a couple of breaths, paying attention either to the expansion or contraction of your diaphragm, or to the passage of the air in and out through your nose. So I do have a reading today, but I didn't want to give it before the meditation and get people to start thinking. My reading is our congregation's full mission statement, including a part that doesn't appear in the order of service. This is it. The foundation of Mission Peak is love. We are a spiritual community of open minds, nurturing growth and healing in ourselves and all people. Together, we strive to live compassionately and courageously as we work for a nonviolent, just, and sustainable world. And then it continues. We embrace and give life to this mission statement by offering each other love, trust, respect, and support in time of joy and need, creating worship services and encouraging spiritual exploration and personal growth, providing educational experiences for all ages that encourage a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, and an acceptance of religious and social diversity, and serving the community in accordance with our social conscience and our Unitarian Universalist principles. So now onto the homily. I usually try to start a message when I'm giving one with a light and funny story, something to break the ice, or something to help me loosen up too. But today I'm going to start with a disclaimer. This message is pointedly not a report from the Committee on Ministry. It's not from Reverend Ward, Reverend Barbara, Reverend Chris, nor the congregational leadership. It's just one voice up here. That question I asked earlier, the one I hope we can look at today, it's this one. What's Mission Peak's ministry? The UUA model on congregational visioning, that thing on the order of service, if you ever got a chance to see it, and in the intro slides today, describes mission as who we are and why we exist. And the visioning model then has concepts contained within, or rather embraced by, our mission. There's covenant, how we are in relationship to each other. We worked on a congregational covenant last year, and one of our aspirations in that is to a fully shared ministry. Okay, so what are we sharing? So the next thing in that model, embraced by mission, is shared ministry goals. Wait, that list I read, the one that we embrace and give life toward the mission with, maybe that's what we're sharing. But if they give life to our mission, why aren't they called mission goals? And the UUA model also describes ministry as everything we do to fulfill our mission. Why does everyone keep using that word ministry? Okay, so Committee on Ministry-wise, I needed to keep going and just hope I worked through my confusion. Part of the COM charter is to witness, reflect, and report on our shared ministry goals. How do I do that thing? To me, goals are something best put into an order. Now, I don't mean we need to be hard over about ranking them, but still, some would be top priority goals and others might be aspirational. We work our way down the list, and when we run out of effort, we should be happy with partial success on those lower items. Or maybe we even have to let lower priorities go. Got it. And in math, one can talk about a sequence, putting a list in order. Now, don't worry, this isn't going to turn into some dry math homily. I'll get away from the math lingo in a minute. And anyway, I'm going to get lectured by math grammarians. It just speaks to how I got to my question. In math, each item in the list is referred to as a term. There's the first term, second term, and so on down the line. But you can also talk about the zeroth term of a sequence. The zeroth term is not part of the list. It comes before the first one on the list. Now, if our shared ministry is a list of goals, then I'd like to suggest there should be a zeroth term on the list. Not a part of the list, not a higher priority goal, but one that informs how we look at the items on the list. And I believe that Zeroth term should be our understanding, our definition of the word ministry. Back to my struggle over the word. I kept trying to explain myself to people, but I just kept failing. It was a word, so I turned to dictionaries. And I think I finally found my answer, or rather my question to all of you, not in the noun ministry, but in Webster's definitions for the verb to minister. There are two definitions. The second of them is to provide aid and service. The first definition, however, is to act as a minister of religion. Okay? Ministers of religion provide aid and service, but they also preach and teach. They proclaim the gospel. They spread the faith. Is the first definition of ministry for professional ministers only? Then why did we covenant to a fully shared ministry? So I ask you, is our shared ministry just one of providing aid and service, or should it also be spreading faith? Which definition applies? As I said, I don't know the congregation's answer, but I finally have my question. Now, if I was up here speaking as a member of COM, I would just ask the question. But now we come to the reason this message is from me alone. Why the disclaimer at the beginning? I find I want to argue for one understanding. I think that choice of definition affects how we minister to each other, people who come to us to Mission Peak, and how we minister to the community and the world at large. So, is our ministry to each other to give aid, to be an accepting, loving, social community of people with common values? Nice ministry. But I believe it should go further. One of the purposes of religion is to help you set your heart at ease. Now, I don't think that purpose matters whether the religion is theistic or not, or even if one is merely spiritual but not religious. And there's a saying about spiritual tourism that I want to use to describe part of what I believe our shared ministry should be. Dig 100 holes in a field, each 1 foot deep, and you end up with a field full of holes. Choose one place and dig a hole 100 feet deep. Then you will find water to satisfy your thirst. I say we need to share those places in the field of religious and spiritual practices where we have found the water of comfort. That we also should share the tools that we have found to be effective to dig in those places and the taste of any water that we have found. So what religion should we be ministering? Now, I realize that's not an easy question, and I'm sad to say this joke is too true. Ask a UU what they believe, and they will usually reply with what they do not believe. But on the other hand, Unitarian theologian James Luther Adams said, "We have a responsibility to develop a literacy and get out of the stage of believing that, because we call ourselves UU, there's nothing more to do." And when Adams famously said, "Revelation is not sealed," pointedly did not say past revelation should not be ignored, that we should each create revelation out of wholly new cloth. The forebears we're called into relationship with found water in the holes they dug in that field of spirituality. Perhaps we should dig in some of those places. To start with, we are the custodians of American Unitarian and Universalist traditions. Historian David Robinson observes, "Like a pauper who searches for the next meal, never knowing of the relatives who would make him rich, American Unitarians lament their vague religious identity while standing upon the richest theological legacy of any American denomination. Possessed of a deep and sustaining history of spiritual achievement and philosophical speculation, religious liberals have been, ironically, dispossessed of heritage." Those of you whose faith are in that part of the spiritual field described by Unitarian and Christian Universalism should not be ceding American Christianity's theological primacy, the understanding of what Jesus taught, to the evangelicals. And those of you who of other traditions welcomed into this liberal religion, which includes me, not only should we be discussing our faith, it is incumbent on us to be literate about those founding faiths as well as our own, and to be able to relate how those faiths harmonize. And there's, I know, in amongst us, a lot of rationalists and humanists, secular or not. I'm talking to you too, as well as to those who identify as spiritual but not religious. We need you to minister, to preach the gospel of what puts your heart at ease. I know your values. I want to know what feeds your spirit. I know we love alike. Where does that love come from? Now, the sharing of theology extends to people who come to visit or hopefully to join us. Richard Gilbert, who wrote the Building Your Own Theology books, has described most people who come in the doors of a UU church as come-outers from other religions, and said he wanted them to feel like they were coming in to an exciting new theological zone. Here, I ask, do we lose people? Do we, as Reverend Gilbert has also said, have them come in the door, down the aisle, and out the back door because there's no theological there? Or because in trying to be all things to all people, are we instead being nothing to anyone? For that matter, do we lose our youth when they age out of RE because theology is presented academically rather than practiced? We have them practice values, and we teach them how to discriminate between belief systems. But do we show them those belief systems from a distance rather than from a place of intimacy? Back to that saying about spiritual tourism. Do we only help them dig a bunch of holes 1 foot deep? The last area of our shared ministry I want to discuss is our ministry to the community and world, our acts of social and ecological conscience. In each of those areas, there are already organizations out there dedicated to that issue. So what does Mission Peak have to offer? What's our ministry? Is our ministry to give additional aid and service, or should it be to act as ministers of religion? Or I would ask it this way, is our ministry to try to solve injustices, or to ensure that liberal, religious, prophetic voices are raised? In Zen, there are what are called bodhisattva vows, also called boundless vows, because they can never be completed. The first of these is traditionally phrased as, beings are numberless, I vow to save them. The group I practiced with changed that word save to wake, as in, I vow to wake all beings. I asked about that difference, and I got a proverb in response. Should we give a person a fish and feed them for a day, or should we teach them to fish? So I ask this, is it more important for Mission Peak as a congregation to try to address the many issues, to give the world fish, or to try to influence belief systems and teach it to love itself, to teach the world to fish? What should be our ministry? Or to put it another way, are we actively trying to bend the arc of the moral universe, or are we just doing a holding action until it hopefully bends itself? In my heart, I often accuse conservative evangelical churches of making a religion of their politics. But if I'm going to do that, I also need to turn a mirror on ourselves and caution us against turning liberal politics into religion. I believe that our politics should come from values, which should flow from our beliefs. And when a person we disagree with out in the world appeals back to their belief systems, we need to be able to engage with them in that place. Both knowing our religious identity and being literate about it is important to expressing the prophetic voice needed to provide that influence, to bend the moral arc. But there are so many critical needs out there. I know we all weep. I know I'm almost to the point of breaking sometimes at how many serious issues there are that the country and the world needs to address, and just how serious they are. So where do we get the strength from to face them, to keep moving forward rather than just giving up? I think that question connects our ministry to the world back to our ministry to each other. Once again, we need help developing those spiritual wells from which to draw strength when we're feeling devastated. So, as we look at our capacity as an organization and that list of shared ministry goals, how should we look at it? And a reminder to you all, we have a congregational polity. The congregation owns its mission and ministry, not the UUA, not Reverend Ward. And now an admission. I feel I'm only a fellow traveler, walking alongside but not of. I feel I've gotten to know your values and I share them. But I don't feel I've gotten to know most of your spiritual homes. I don't know if you already find the comfort you need from the congregation's shared ministry, and if you feel it reaches out to the world in a spiritual way. But this quote I ran across while trying to understand the purpose of CALM may give me my answer. Whatever the stated mission, the form will reveal the congregation's mission. An audit of where the congregation's energy is dominantly focused will display this real mission. That quote reminds us that words are just that, words. Now, while I'm on CALM, I will work to support and hold up your collective vision and mission. But I have to ask what that vision and mission are. Whatever we state, whatever the words in our mission statement, where we focus our energy reveals our real mission. So I ask each of you, when you look at how we spend our time and energy, the form of our ministry, what does it tell you about what our real mission is? Is it what you hope for? Is it what you hope for each other, for newcomers, for the world? Outside of Sunday services, does any of our energy go beyond the definition of aid and service? And I'll ask, are the words mission and ministry as we use them interchangeable, or is the nuance important? Would anything change if we called the list of shared ministry goals a list of shared mission goals? I have to say that so far, I wouldn't see any difference in what I've done on CALM if CALM stood for the Committee on Mission. Perhaps aid and service are the extent of this religion now. In doing research for this talk, I found out that this tension between service and spreading faith is not just mine, but it's been something that the UUA and UU ministers have also struggled with. Here I'll ask, did the UUA inadvertently play down the importance of spreading faith when they chose the word mission to follow vision in the visioning model instead of the word ministry? And does the second article commission's suggestion of going from principles and sources to values and covenants further enable that movement away from a religious ministry? Now, even if you disagree with my definition for the zeroth term in our shared ministry list, I thank you today for considering the question, for taking the time to look at the question together. You are good people. You're trying to do good things for each other, for those that come in through your doors, and for the world at large. And I'm sorry how I could not figure out how to spin this message with less confrontation and more inspiration. If you see this talk as dissenting from the congregation's best path, please remember it's only from a fellow traveler, not from the congregation's ministers or leadership. And if my words offend, it's also why I let none of those people or anyone else, including Gail, have any part in them. Just please be just unhappy with me. But if the difference between mission and ministry touches you, then I hope it serves to remind you why you came to Mission Peak. I believe that shared ministry should be more than aid and service, that it is important to actively spread faith, to share the places in that field of liberal spirituality where you have found the water of comfort, the tools with which you used to dig for that water, and the taste of solace you have found. Or if you just identify as a seeker, someone who's looking for a place and how to dig, know that sharing that seeking is also ministry. So I'll ask, is it enough to love alike, or do you need to speak how you came to that love? I say, if you remain silent about your theological vision, you cannot build bridges between faiths, and all of your voices cannot make sweet harmony. When providing pastoral care to one another, formally or informally, is chicken soup enough, or should it also include chicken soup for the soul? When ministering to the world, is it enough to work on social and ecological justice problems as we find need and capacity, or should the congregation's ministry be to raise a liberal, religious, prophetic voice and try to bend the world towards loving itself? Those coming in that door or through the door of Zoom, you should know that this is a place of loving acceptance. When these people say you are welcome here, they mean it deeply. But I say to them, they should also work to provide new theological zones for you to come into. If Mission Peak is going to declare itself the home of liberal religion in the Tri-Cities and beyond, as it does on the Week on the Peak, then it needs to minister liberal religion. Or should perhaps the words on the Week on the Peak be changed to the home for spiritual liberals in the Tri-Cities and beyond? Yes, I'm using provocative language. I hope to provoke thinking. But it is not my wish to cause division or to add yet another issue that needs to be addressed. My hope is that as each of you and this congregation goes about life, such as hopefully embracing Ariel's new efforts as RE coordinator, it does so with a unified and a positive view rather than my admittedly contrarian one. If there is anything in this message that resonates with you, I sincerely hope you can respond to it and to listen to each other joyfully. I say that those who walk in that door, the world at large, and each of you, need Mission Peak's unstated zeroth term in its shared ministry goals, its definition of the word ministry, its view of what its shared ministry should be, to have more religion. Thank you for listening today. I love you all. Take care.
is in a holy place. We are blessed with love and amazing grace when our heart is in a holy place. When we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and pride, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our hearts stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy
If you want to remain standing, today I'll be going straight into the benediction after the chalice is extinguished. So I'll ask you at this time to put your hand on your heart and reach out to the world with your other hand to spread the intention of our words. And please join me in these words to extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And until we are together again, may you feel the power of each other's faith. And when the God of your heart stirs within, may you express it as part of your shared ministry. Go in love of each other and of the world, and go in peace.